Welcome to today's Pastor's Perspective. I'm Ken Gray, serving here at Calvary Life Family Worship Center in Cheshire, Connecticut. And today our devotions will be in 2 Samuel chapter 19, beginning with verse 11. At this point, the war is over, but the problems aren't. There's a lot going on in Israel and in Judah that is very troubling. There's confusion, there's fear, there's anxiety, there's a lack of leadership. David is on his way back to Jerusalem. And so here we see David faced with a variety of problems, but he has risen above his grief to see that the needs of the nation are more important than his own personal grief, and he begins to take steps. We see also that Israel is especially filled with fear because of their having sided with Absalom. Judah is somewhat negligent or slow about bringing David back. So David begins to address these issues, and he speaks to the spiritual leadership of Judah, exhorting them to begin to move forward with their responsibility of bringing him back into the city. It's very important to him. He says in verse 12, "You are my brothers. You are my bone and my flesh. Why then should you be the last to bring back the king?" But then in the next verse, he says something very fascinating. He's going to speak to Amasa, who was the leader of the commander of Absalom's army, who rose up against him and wanted to kill him. And he says in verse 13, "Say to Amasa, are you not my bone and my flesh? May God do so to me and more also, if you will not be commander of the army before me continually in the place of Joab." Now this is an amazing statement because Joab had been his commander and he is his relative. But Amasa had joined the forces of the enemy, but David is extending a hand of mercy. He also might be a little bit angry still over the fact that Joab had disobeyed his order in the killing of Absalom. And so it says here, as a consequence of these two particular decisions, the exhortation for the spiritual leaders to get on the ball and take their responsibility, and the invitation to Amasa to lead the army, it says in verse 14, "Thus he turned the hearts of all the men of Judah as one man, so that they sent word to the king saying, 'Return, you and all your servants.' The king then returned and came as far as Jordan and Judah and came to Gilgal in order to go to meet the king, to bring the king across the Jordan." Now, there's still some other folks that caused him some trouble, especially on his journey out of the nation where he was fleeing for his own safety. There was that man Shimei, a Benjamite, who come out, mocked him, throwed stones, cursed him, all kinds of things. But of course, he is now in fear of his own life, and he comes out and apologizes to David, and David extends a hand of mercy. Now, this is not really probably a personal expression of mercy, but more an expression of mercy to the Benjamites so that he would not lose his position of authority over them. He's trying to show mercy to this guy who did wrong in order to benefit the entire nation and bringing about a unity. So we see David taking very significant steps here, some of them maybe even risky, but the scripture tells us that he did so with the wisdom, rising above his own grief, beginning to see the real needs of the people, and then making difficult decisions that will enable the nation to get onto a path of healing. Now, it didn't resolve all the issues. There were other people. There was the Mephibosheth issue and his servant Ziba, and there were a lot of issues that he had to deal with. But in each step of the way, he's laying the groundwork for the restoration and the healing of the nation. It wasn't perfect. They were still squabbling with each other. Judah and Israel still squabbling about who was more important to David and how they did this and that. And so it wasn't perfect, but David was able to rise above his grief and take steps that would enable the nation to begin a journey of healing. So many times, I think, in our life, we get so overwhelmed with our own grief that we aren't able to serve people in needs that are obviously right around us. We need to ask God for the wisdom to rise above our own pain sometimes and make wise decisions in order to bring healing and restoration to those that God has given us to serve. I think this is such an important lesson. I remember a phrase that my mom used to say, "For heaven's sake, do the right thing." And I believe as Christians, as believers in Jesus Christ, as the church of Jesus Christ, and a part of God's kingdom, we need to take steps that are sometimes difficult for us, but do it for heaven's sakes. God bless you and have a great day.